This is the Business Storytelling Show with Christoph Trapp. Name a top 20 storytelling podcast and a top 5% podcast globally. Christoph chats with thought leaders and experts to share tips and tricks that can help you tell your company's stories better to drive business results. Available wherever you listen to podcasts, live streamed on major social media channels, and part of the DB&A television network, available on most U.S. television sets and streaming on Roku and Amazon Fire. Here's Christoph with today's episode. Let's go.
Hey, business storytellers, how's it going? Hey, today, episode 542 with Brooke Sellas, we want to talk about how do you connect, have conversations that connect, how do you listen to people, and how do you convert them to customers? Brooke actually wrote the book on the topic. You can check out my Amazon video review. It should be on her page. If you don't see it, just refresh until you see it there. But very interesting topic because, you know, we all want to have conversations. But then sometimes some people take advantage of that and they want to draw me into a conversation that I regret having, especially on social media. And, you know, the other thing that I was just thinking about as I was thinking about this topic earlier, what is a conversation, right? So somebody responds to me, is that a conversation? Is that always authentic? I'll give you an example. We had something installed at the house. The company knew that I wasn't very happy with them because I basically told them, and they knew because they were doing a horrible job. I gave them a 1-star review almost the second they were done, and they responded, "We're always happy to talk to our customers and would be happy to hop on the phone call with you to find out what's going on." Why in the world would they have to hop on the phone call with me? They just were on the phone with me and heard me complain about how terrible they are. I mean, is that really authentic? Is that what we're talking about? I don't know. Let's find out what Brooke's idea is behind having conversations online. How do we make it meaningful for your company and also for your customers? Brooke, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here and to talk about conversations that connect.
So tell us, I mean, you and I, we've been connected for, I don't know, I want to say years. I guess I didn't look that up, and I'm not even sure how you looked that up, honestly, on Twitter. But why did you write this book? Why is this an important topic? And for lack of a better term, what's the definition of a conversation online?
Well, it's an interesting story that you bring up in the beginning there. And my answer to that story is very simply, no, that is not the type of conversation we're looking for. They kind of ruined the chance at a conversation with you during the project and then kind of came in late in the game to try to redeem themselves. And clearly it didn't go very well. But essentially, I decided to write the book because I've been in social media for, 15 years now. I've owned my company, B Squared Media, for about 10 years. And I've seen a fundamental shift in the way consumers use social media, which is more for research and decision-making on that path to purchase. And what I found through that path to purchase is if, as the brand, you can have better conversations that connect with the people who follow you, but also your would-be customers and your current customers, you can collect voice of the customer data and do a much better job with marketing, with sales, with customer support, R&D, product packaging, you name it. We've kind of done it as far as using that voice of customer data to innovate and do a better job.
And how do you actually understand how people are talking? So, for example, sometimes, you know, I'm a big American Airlines fan, and I mean, I don't travel nearly as much today as I used to, but I love their tone of voice. Like even when they talk to me in private, do you know what I mean? Like you request an upgrade or whatever it might be, and they say things like, our wings are crossed, right? And it's just kind of cute. It's just kind of like on brand. How do companies learn to participate, or are we just talking about listening? I mean, I guess maybe that's my next question. What's more important, to participate or just to listen, or what's the right mix, if we can even put a number on that?
Yeah. So honestly, you kind of have to go into the psychology and the sociology behind conversations. And essentially, that's what I did my undergraduate thesis on. It's called the social penetration theory. Beautiful concept, horrible name. But essentially, it says as we get to know one another, we're having these conversations, but to move the relationship forward and to build trust and to build loyalty, we have to get to the deeper parts of those conversations, right? So it's also called the onion theory. And essentially, if you think of an onion, most brands and their conversation and their content is going around the onion, right? They're focusing on breadth. It's very superficial. And that's cliches and facts, right? So as we're having conversations, they're sharing cliche information or they're sharing factual information, which again doesn't peel back the layers of that onion to get to depth. To do that, our conversations have to consist of opinions and feelings, both of the brand, meaning, sharing opinions and feelings about our products, our services, our brand core values, but also soliciting the opinions and the feelings of our audiences to then better collect voice of customer data and make differences with our marketing, sales, and whatever else it may be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, I mean, it's interesting because um, it sounds like a lot more work than us just pushing out. I mean, I actually wrote down here. I said, ask about advertising. And I love social media, organic. Ads are fine too, to an extent, but I don't need any more New York Yankees hats. Why do you keep sending me the ad, right? Like, yes, you get me to click, but at the end of the day, I don't need any more. So what is
Mhm.
like, how do you figure out what the mix is, right? So many teams, they need results today. That's why they do social media ads, right? I mean, that's why they're trying to grow quickly. And what you're describing, it sounds like the right thing to do, but it's kind of like the right thing to do is I should lose some weight, but I'm not doing that overnight, right? I'm not going to finish that this quarter, by the way, but I'm working on it. So how do you
Right.
figure out how to make what you're describing part of your overall strategy and actually implement it? And how long does it take?
It doesn't happen overnight. And the stat that I share in the book, which is my own personal opinion on how much of your content should make up those 4 levels of disclosure, is that 60% of the content that you put out should be feelings and opinions based. Okay? 30% should be factual and only 10% should be made up of cliches. And I'm talking organic content on social when I mention this mix, because if you get better with that 60% of feelings and opinions type content, again, both sharing as the brand and soliciting that voice of customer opinion and feeling data from your audiences, your ads will also get better, because you'll be able to find out what those relevant and trending topics are, what's important to your customers and would-be customers. Can you align your would-be and current customers with your brand core values? Do their core values match? And that's really where the sweet spot is. But I'll have to say, it's breadth and depth, because hopefully you're continuously adding new people to your audiences, right? You're growing your follower base. And you need to have that superficial talk happening with those newer people, right? But you also need to keep the older audience members or the dedicated audience members engaged, which means you have to be going to depth. So it's a fine mix of understanding and using both breadth and depth when it comes to those 4 self-disclosures. So cliches, facts, opinions, and feelings.
And just going back really quickly to the onion, we do actually have the onion in the book, peeling the onion. And it took me a minute to find it, but I remember somebody tweeting, "What happens when you peel the onion? You just get more onion." Incorrect. You do not. You get superficial,
Less.
intimate, personal, and then the core, and you have to get to the depth. You know what's interesting to me too, when you talk about the different levels, and so I grew up as a journalist, and I don't think I ever worked for a media company where this happened, but they certainly were media companies, and they wanted everything to be in depth. So at the end of the day, what would happen is nothing would ever get done because some topics can go in depth. There's nothing else. It's like when I send my wife a text, or the TikTok, you may have seen it. So and so was in a car accident, and the woman goes, "Oh, was Sarah driving?" Oh, and he's like, "That's all I know. Literally, I cannot go into any more depth." And then I was kind of making fun of that topic a little bit. But how do you figure out what topics you should go in depth on, what you shouldn't? I mean, you have to prioritize somehow, right? I mean, is it like email marketing? You focus on your target accounts, or how does that work in social, especially?
Yeah. Well, I think in the beginning it's gut, which is kind of where we all
Yeah.
are now, right? We were using social continuously as a broadcast platform. So I'm not asking you to change that right away. But once you do start to have some of these conversations looking for opinions and feelings, you'll start to get that voice of the customer data back, which tells you this is what content we're looking for. It also helps you understand the pain points and the pleasure points of your audience. So then you can formulate messaging around those pleasure points right away. But for the pain points, obviously, you've got to figure out how to, I call it a pothole in the path to purchase. You've got to figure out how to smooth out that pothole. But if you can go back and say to your audiences, hey, we were listening to you. We took your information to heart. We took those pain points to heart. We changed whatever it was with that pain point, and now we're giving you this resolution. One example I can give you is a makeup brand. It's called Bloom. They have a serum that you put on your face to help with anti-aging. Big popular topic with me. And they took the dropper away and they made it a pump, and no one liked that. And everyone was complaining. So I'm assuming, they were seeing these complaints in the conversations, and they took that information to heart and they brought the dropper back. And the content that they created during this process was very innovative because they showed those negative complaints. They showed right there on their post, like, hey, here's all these people saying they hate the pump and they want the dropper. And then when they reintroduced the dropper, they had user-generated content of all of the pleasure points of people saying how excited they were that they brought the dropper back. But then there was also people in user-generated content saying, you listened to us. Wow, I can't believe you actually changed it back based on what we said. How many brands are doing that? So few. But if you can be innovative with the voice of the customer data that you bring back to your brand by having these conversations, you can create content like that will get a lot of engagement, but also help you be a better brand.
What's interesting to me too is I'm a journalist at heart, right? Even though I haven't worked a day as a journalist as a true journalist, as opposed to a brand journalist in a long time. And when I see opinions and feelings, I mean, feelings are different, but opinions, I think some brands a lot of brands probably struggle with that, sharing an opinion. But then you also have to have, I mean, you can have an opinion on all kinds of things. And we see people out there who claim, oh, this is my opinion. And I'm like, that's just wrong. It's like a wrong thing. Like, you can have an opinion, the sky is green, but it will never be green, right? So how do you find that balance of sharing something that's still fact-based? I'll give you an example. So in your book, you have the graphic with Ben and Jerry's, and it says, Texas new abortion law is racist. Here's why. And you actually say, Ben and Jerry's definitely has an opinion. And I'm thinking, well, let's see the details. Like, if they can back it up, that's not an opinion, that's a fact.
That's a great point. Yeah, Ben and Jerry's is the risky example. And what I try to tell people in the book is it doesn't have to be risky, right? Opinions and feelings do not have to be risky. And I give some like innocuous examples too. But if you think about Ben and Jerry's, they've always been a political brand. That's really how they built their brand. And so the people, I'm assuming, right? But we can pretty safely assume the people who follow and buy from Ben and Jerry's, they've always known that that's how Ben and Jerry's is, that they're going to be making these very bold political statements. And for the people who don't agree with Ben and Jerry's, and you can see it right there on that post that I have in the book, they very loudly railed against the Ben and Jerry's brand. But most of the voices on the post, because again, Ben and Jerry's aligned their core brand values with the values of their audiences, most of the people were in support of what they were saying. So, I'm not saying that you should get out there and be risky. If your brand is a political brand, then maybe it does make sense. But Patagonia is another great example. They make clothing and outdoor apparel for people who are outdoor enthusiasts. Their brand core value is supporting climate change. More than likely, the majority of their audience supports climate change. And if they don't, being okay with the dissolution is so important to understand, because I think we marketers get stuck in like the vanity metrics and followers and more and more and more. I would rather have 100 followers who are super behind and aligned with my brand core values conversing with me on my social pages than have 1 million fans who hardly cared about what I had to say and certainly didn't want to interact or engage with me, because that means they probably aren't going to convert either.
It's certainly an interesting discussion what the numbers mean. I mean, her name is currently escaping me, but she was on the show and she just wrote a book and on marketing and said this COO or whoever said we need 7,000 leads, and she said how did you even come up with that number? Like,
that's an interesting number.
Right? What is that based on? Right? So it is certainly interesting to always think about that. How do we get the right people, not just people in general, and especially depending what your brand is. I mean, American Airlines certainly has a wider audience, right? Or airlines in general than a B2B company that offers something very specific to live streamers, for example, because there's way fewer of us than there is of the traveling public. Now, you talk about when you do this right, you do end up with user-generated content. And I'd like to find out why that's a good thing, how that looks. And I'll give you a quick story. I think there's a lot of companies, maybe not a lot, I don't know what the number is, but that don't really understand it. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I offered a local company, I don't really do much local work at all, or none really, to help them with their marketing and social media. And they said, why would we pay you? You already are sharing stuff about us on your own social media. Well, because I like the brand. And they didn't get it, right? They didn't get, I wasn't talking about user-generated content. I was talking about their content. And it just didn't connect, right? Like they couldn't disconnect me, the person, from me, the marketer. So talk about, why is user-generated content good? And how does it look? And how do you integrate it?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I've been seeing a lot of people talking about user-generated content, or UGC, online lately. And there is a confusion there. A lot of people are talking about influencer marketing, where someone's getting paid to promote the company's content. And that is not the same as user-generated content. UGC happens organically, right? This is when someone becomes an advocate or is so aligned with those brand core values that they share your information out to their peers. They create content with your products and telling people how it works. IKEA is such a wonderful example of this. They have IKEA, and a whole community built around IKEA hacks. These are people who love IKEA, buy IKEA furniture, but then tell you kind of like how to upgrade it or do the hacks with the building it. And a bookcase becomes a something else. But they have this whole community around people sharing user-generated content on their own. They're not incentivized from the brand to do it. And what we typically see happen when there's a lot of positive chatter about a product or a service with consumers and they're using user-generated content, there's usually a direct correlation in the number of sales. So when it's authentic, when the user creates it just because they love it or they're an advocate of the brand, it usually gives what we call like a peer-to-peer recommendation, right? It's the peer, your friend telling you how amazing this product is versus the brand telling you how amazing the product is. And that makes sense from an emotional perspective, because simply we don't trust brands. Consumers don't trust brands, but we trust our peers.
Yeah, what's interesting about the whole thing, I mean, as you were talking about the disconnect or misunderstanding of influencer marketing and really, just user-generated content. I mean, I'm thinking about all the emails I get every single day, and they are reaching out as an influencer outreach, but they're really trying to camouflage it as user-generated content. Everybody wants to build a long-term relationship. I've never heard of them. Most of them aren't even based in the United States. And then, they want to send me a free product. My opinion, my friends, if you're listening to this and somebody wants to send you a free product, my opinion, check with your own financial advisor, is that I have to pay taxes on free products if I'm expected to create content for that free product. So if somebody sends you a crappy $200 product, you have to pay taxes on that. Yes, you can donate it. Talk to your own financial person. Now, how do we create those communities, however? I mean, I'm thinking about a couple communities I'm in. And one is, believe it or not, call me a nerd, is my generator. Generac. There is a Facebook group and people share pictures. You have a Generac?
Yeah, but I'm not in the community. Tell me about it. Yeah.
There is a Facebook group and people ask questions and people share pictures of their generator on how they put flowers around it and how they did this and the other thing. And then the other one is, which is maybe not quite as out there, is Game Changer, right? So I do the Game Changer app for my girls' softball games, and there is a whole community. And the people go, okay, here's the play. How would I score that? Okay, great. How do I do that in Game Changer? I love them. I think they're awesome. Sometimes I don't need to see as many pictures about generators in a flower bed, but how do you create that? I mean, how do you even get there? I mean, that is way longer than we have for the couple minutes we have left here, but how do we even start?
I think it starts with the conversations that connect, because again, so few brands are going there, right? Most of the brand content is boring. It's based in cliches and facts. That does not make you stop scrolling. That does not make you want to engage in a conversation. The brands who are using those opinions and feelings, and some of them are hilarious, by the way, not risky at all, like totally hilarious, are getting a lot of engagement, are getting a lot of those conversations going. Once you can start having those conversations that connect, you can almost organically start to understand who your brand advocates are. You can see them constantly engaging in your content, constantly having those conversations with you. And then that's when you get to go say, hey, Christoph, I noticed you're very involved. We're thinking about starting a community. Would you want to be one of our community moderators? Would you be interested in helping us organically create this community where our mission is to simply support the brand and support one another? It's not that hard, but you've got to start with the hard work or the deep work of having those conversations that connect.
You do have to start there. So, and I think that's sometimes where I get really some hard feelings when people throw around user-generated content, especially when it's the executives who all they see is, oh, dollar signs. We're going to save some money because we don't have to hire people to help with it, and you still have to hire somebody to do it. It's just kind of like, how does it change, and who's doing the exact work might be different from 10 years ago. The last 2.5 minutes here, Brooke, tell us first of all, your book, it's a great read. I left a review on Amazon with the video through my influencer storefront. Check that out, everyone, on Amazon.com. And but how do people connect with you? Like, who do you work with? Who reaches out to you? Give us an overview of that if you can.
Yeah, so we're a social first agency. Everything we do kind of revolves around social media. Customer care is obviously a big part of what we do. And our clients really range from startups and small mom and pop shops, so solopreneurs, all the way up to global brands. So we're not really, we don't really discriminate in size or budget. If we can help you and your budget aligns with our pricing, we're happy to do so. Typically, though, for those larger customer care clients, they have to have enough volume. So that is more of like a middle market or a enterprise size brand. They've got all of that volume and all of that conversation happening, and they really need to outsource to someone who can handle it, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, because employees only work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 typically. So it just depends, but I'm happy to have that conversation with anyone. I have a free 30-minute consultation. We can talk through it. And you can find me at bsquare.media, which is our website. Or if you use Twitter or LinkedIn, that happens to be my two favorite platforms, just look up Brooke Sellas, BROOKE SELLAS, and you'll find me right away. I think I'm the only Brooke Sellas out there.
And of course, if you're watching on the video, you can see her Twitter handle at right there on the screen as well. If you're listening to the podcast, consider hopping over to Spotify. As far as I know, that is the only platform still where this podcast runs as a video podcast. So not sure how soon that's going to happen for the other platforms. I'm thinking it will be at some point, right? Because everybody copies each other nowadays.
Yes.
I guess there's a big difference between a big brand and a little brand, though, when it comes to social media.
Yeah, the little brands are more focused on content, I would say. It's figuring out how to have those conversations, what content to share. The larger brands are more interested in collecting that voice of the customer data, figuring out how to, use that data for tactical differentiation and campaigns and whatnot.
Yeah, fantastic. Brooke, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck with the book. Everyone check it out on Amazon and reach out to Brooke's company if you need help.
Thank you.
That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Please rate and review our show on your favorite podcast channels. And don't forget to share this episode with your networks. We appreciate you. Until next time, let the best stories win.